you want me to do? You can do it.
Okay, well, here we go.
Here we go.
All right, well, welcome, you guys. We are excited to be here for our very first table talk. And if you are a woman in business, or I mean, even just a woman, you're in the right spot. My name is Charity Majors. I'm the founder of Business and Bubbly, and this is Sarah Brewer. She is one of our chapter directors. She's one of our community leaders, and we're just gonna chat today, like just good conversation around the table about what it looks like to be a woman in business, about what it looks like to build community and to lead women, which we were joking earlier. It's kind of sometimes like herding cats.
Yeah, that's about right.
But it is also really, really amazing. And so Sarah, let's have you start and just kind of introduce yourself and who you are, what you're about, and then I'll dive in a little bit about myself and we'll jump into the conversation. But go for it.
Sweet. Well, thank you. Appreciate being on one of the first little table talks. I love that. Love being able to be a guest. So thanks for asking me to join on here. So a little about myself. I've been in the Boise area for about 7 years now, which is crazy to think that went by so quick. Came here from Boise State, so I'm a good old Bronco, and I studied communications and business, and I graduated, did some things after school, kind of finding my rhythm, and now I recently became a branding and portrait photographer. So I'm doing the talking as well as doing the business. So I'm glad to see that my degrees coming into hand. And I got into networking about a year ago, but it was more of the B&I networking. So there's like a lot of like trade heavy, very male dominated. It's still a lot of fun though. I feel like I can hang with the guys, but met Charity about around the winter time, I would say. And beginning of the year, she encouraged me to kind of look into this kind of opportunity. And so I took it. So now it's been about 5 months now since I've been kicking with the Bodo downtown chapter, which has been super cool. And kind of went into it just wanting to encourage women to be authentic. I feel like I'm authentic myself. I've had a journey of trying not to live up to other people's standards and be my own self and be happy with that. My dad always told me if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. And so I feel like that's what I get to do, is just bringing women together, connecting them, knowing that that person would do well with that person. And so it's been a lot of fun just hosting and making people laugh and bringing them together, sharing emotion, and also collaborating business. It's been really fun.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So Sarah, I know you have a really powerful story, and if you are open to sharing it, not to put you on the spot, but kind of. But I love what you said about just how being authentic, and you guys, I've heard her story before, and it's really, really powerful and actually really sets the stage for vulnerability and authenticity. Like that's one of her superpowers. And what's really amazing, and I'll just encourage you in this, is vulnerability. Like when we do vulnerability, like it feels really, really scary, really hard, like very exposing. But what it actually does is, to others, it shows your strength. And it also gives permission for authenticity and vulnerability for others to do that as well. And since that is like your superpower, if you're open to sharing, I would love to just kind of unpack some of that.
Yeah, I feel I did not get here easily. I grew up kind of being overweight and kind of went on a journey. I feel like that's where it kind of started, of this idea of where I recognized, oh, that's when I started living my life for other people's, because obviously I got bullied. I was in a really dark spot. I considered committing suicide just at the age of 8. And so that was kind of like a big deal, but I feel like God kind of talked to me at that moment in my bedroom before even thinking about doing such a thing, and he kind of stopped me and said that I could change this around. There's still time, there's still an opportunity, and that don't let that bottom mark kind of rule my life. And so kind of went on a journey and lost the weight, and it's really crazy how people started to recognize me once that was gone. They're just like, "Oh, Sarah!" Like that was when they started to actually see me, which is crazy because they didn't see me as a person I was before. And so at a really young age, to kind of recognize that people were finally seeing me once I made like a big shift, kind of really got into my head. And so I feel like ever since I was a kid, I've always worked out to look good for others, to be recognized by people, to be liked because I looked good, to get the right haircut, the right hair color. And I did that for a majority of my life up until college. When I had a boyfriend at that time too, I did the same thing. But some things that, when you have your first love and that like all ends, it's just like feels like the world's over, and you get to a point where you're like, oh, I'll never love anybody again. And so it was like a bad point for me. I got into a lot of drinking and really bad coping skills. And yeah, it was hard. I didn't know that I was like spiraling like really, really fast down a place that wasn't really part of my like identity and God and who he saw me as. And so while I was dealing with like kind of that self like look of myself, I have very bad body dysmorphia, and having to deal with that kind of led me to bad decisions. And ultimately I was also sexually assaulted while I was in college, and that was also another point where I didn't know how to cope with those things. And I feel like I was also not having a chance to be myself. Like, how could something like that happen to me? And so I feel like I've been on this very long journey of being able to talk to people about those things. Because when I first went through those things, nobody knew a thing. But then on the outside, I was like being happy. I was doing well in school. I was in a sorority. I was doing all the things in that. But at the other end of the stick, I was very depressed and still covering up a lot of the baggage and the trauma that I actually was dealing with. And so I feel like as I've been vulnerable and reaching out to other women who have opened up themselves for me to talk to and work through those things, it's been really good to know that if I can offer that story and know that a lot of women have been in those same shoes, and to offer how I've been able to take those bad coping skills and turn them into more healthy ones. Yeah, it's been a trip, but I feel like vulnerability has come from just realizing that I'm not alone. There's a lot more strength when you share what you've been through with others, and yeah, you can find a sense of community, and people really appreciate being able to talk about those things and where they can go to if they need help. So
yeah, wow. No, it's so, your story is really powerful, and to see where you are now, even at such a young age. And if you have ever met Sarah, I mean, you're obviously getting to see how incredible she is, but just know that I'm really, really proud of you. And there's something that, like, there is a reason that you are a chapter director and a leader and a community builder. And everyone that I talk to says that there's something really, really special about you. Mm-hmm. And that they love being in a community, and they're like, that at such a young age for you to be doing this. Like, if I would have had my stuff together half as much as you do, like, who knows what would have been going on. But yeah, there's a beautiful call and a purpose on your life, and it's going to be really fun to see and to watch and to continue to challenge you to grow and who you are and what you're being called to do. So
thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's so funny because people are like, oh, you're just so mature for your age. And I'm like, yeah, it's because I've been through some stuff, man. Like, I feel like I've aged 10 years and just the stuff I've been through. But it is good because I feel like I can level with the people that are a little bit more mature in business. Like, I feel like I can ask those questions. And yeah, it's been really fun. I feel like when I say I'm 23, I'm like, that's so weird because I feel like I'm 28 right now. So I can't imagine what I'll be like when I get there. So
I love it. There's a lot of lessons there. Like, maturity comes with lessons. A lot of wisdom comes with sometimes the hardest lessons. So speaking of wisdom, mm-hmm. what were some of the lessons that you were able to learn through some of those hard times?
Whew. Well, I think I had to learn a lot of self-awareness and kind of bringing to light what I was doing that wasn't necessarily good for me, because I could have been in that spot for a long time. I could have became an alcoholic, could have gotten into drugs, could have just like tumbled into like all these negative things. So self-awareness for me was just like, okay, what are some good things that like I could bring my body from this very fight or flight mode to coming down to a calm space, because that's what happens when you deal with trauma is you're always in fight or flight, your cortisol levels are through the roof, like everything is just wacko. And so self-awareness, I mean, I had some therapy sessions kind of talking those things out, which is really good, which is what I said earlier. It's just so good to talk to other women about things because there's so much that people can give advice about. But you just have to be self-aware. Like now I feel like I do a lot more yoga. I used to use like fitness as like a very harmful thing rather than like a beneficial, like, oh, I love my body, I'm working out today. But sometimes I feel my body now, I'm like, yeah, I want to go to the gym, but my body needs more of a rest today. I need to meditate. I feel like that's one of the things. Probably another is just being able to be open to people. Just because I feel like I have had a family that was not open to those kind of topics because we never had it, and they're a little bit older, and so I feel like they grew up in families that weren't open with those kind of conversations, and so I had to find kind of more of a, you know, a guide, which is usually more older women to kind of talk to those things. And yeah, I feel like it's a lot better to kind of get the things off your chest with the people that you trust rather than not. So I feel like those are kind of the biggest lessons that I've learned, is just talk about things that are bothering you. Like, don't let it eat at you, because it can get really bad if like you just keep everything in here, and that was like ruining my heart at that time. So yeah, I feel like those are the two things I feel like come to mind. Yeah.
No, that's really good. And I'll second what you're saying as far as getting it out. I remember, so one of the hard times, I would say what I would call my dark night of the soul, was when I journeyed through the loss of a child. And it's a situation which I'm sure like you, it feels really, really isolating. And you feel really, really alone, and like no one knows what you're going through. And it wasn't until as I started my healing journey and coming out of that, and therapy and grief and trauma counseling and EMDR and a lot of that inner healing stuff, that it's when I found community and when I started to share my story, I found that I wasn't alone. And I found that there were actually a lot of other people who had gone through that journey as well. And it was actually really healing to find those other people and to be able to have those conversations. And one of the nuggets that one of the biggest lessons that I received from that journey was that we are all here on purpose. That it's not a mistake that you're here, Sarah. It's not a mistake that you, if you're watching this on the live stream or the replay or listening to this on the podcast, it's not a mistake that any of us are here. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor, ugly crying when I was going through this journey, my dark night of the soul, and like asking the big questions, like why me, why us, why this baby, like why am I even here, why these hopes and dreams, why our family, and it was like the big questions. And when I was sitting there buried in shame, I felt like I was completely broken. For me, my higher power is God, so for you, fill in the blank. But God came and sat with me and told me that I wasn't broken, and didn't give me a 7-step to get out of my whatever, right?
I wish that he did sometimes.
And just really imparted, because I think we can teach what we know, which there's a lot of people that are doing that, which is great, but we can impart what we've experienced. And what was imparted during that time was deep purpose and deep revelation of the miracle that every single person is. And it has given me the lens and the perspective to walk around with so much love and compassion for every single human being, and to know that a million pieces and parts have to come together for life to be sustained. And so it's not a mistake that any of us are here, and that we're literally these divine dreams, these God dreams, walking around in human skin on the planet out of all of eternity at this exact time. Like, if you think about it, like, for your parents to have you, for their parents to have them, for their parents to, like, it's like trillions and trillion, like one in, I forget, it's like 19 zeros, whatever that is.
It's a big number.
Right? A chance for you to be here right now.
Yeah, that alone.
Totally. And when you get that perspective, like, something shifts and something changes. And so for me, like, even as a community builder, as a leader, it's like, people as messy as we are also really, really amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. That's why I feel like it's so important to understand people's perspective, because you may say one thing, and then if another person perceives it differently, and you could be like, oh, that's weird, you didn't get what I put down. You could be like, oh, okay, like, you saw it a different way. What was it? How's it that you perceived it? So
Yeah.
I feel like that's good to have an open mind about how people think and do. And I mean, as you're going through those bad things, I'm sure, like you said, you're there and you're like, why is this happening? But I feel like a friend of mine who I've done like Alma therapy with, I don't know if you've heard of that at all. Yeah, it's like a form of like acupressure. It's kind of like releasing negative energy out. I like really got into natural like medicine and all that stuff. Like, a few years ago, started being like, what the heck is that? Not interested. But as I was telling her that same question, I'm like, I just don't know why all the people around me that are my same age are just not going through this. Like, why do I have to go through this hard stuff? I have no one to relate to my age. And she goes, well, to me, it just seems that you are just transforming into your most purest self. And I was like, holy crap. I was like, that's it. You know, like, sometimes we go through that and we leave behind that old version of ourselves and become a whole new person. And I feel like the beauty about life is that we choose every day to create whatever we want. So I'm sure after that, did you see some shifts in yourself, like personality-wise, after going through that?
Oh, for sure. There was like such a deep view, like with empathy and compassion and genuine love for the people around me. Not that it wasn't before, but it just really deepened. Like, it got a lot richer and a lot thicker and a lot deeper. And I think that, like what you were saying about even with identity, there was a big identity shift in the way that I became more like, it was like I kind of took off those layers of the, you know, of the people-pleasing tendencies or the perfectionist tendencies. And speaking of identity, I used to say things like, oh, I'm a people pleaser, I'm a recovering people pleaser, or a recovering perfectionist. And I don't say those things anymore because that's like an identity statement compared to it being more of a behavior that was learned and, you know, like kind of a mask that was put on. And so as I began to unlearn those different things, those behaviors, just an encouragement, maybe if you are listening and you're finding yourself, oh, I'm a perfectionist or a recovering people pleaser or whatever that might be, know that your identity is actually something that's really, really important, and the words that you say are really important. And so instead of understand that those are more tendencies and they're learned behaviors that we pick up along the way for survival, and they're like, they got us so far until they didn't. Until they stopped us, right? Like, they kept us safe for a while. They kept us, like, whatever it was we were doing that time, they kept us safe and alive at that point until it didn't. And I was actually just writing on the blog yesterday, and Joe Dispenza has this really great quote, and he talks about how when you're being called into your higher self, into that next version of you, when you are stepping into your future, there's actually a part of your past, a part of you that you will have to confront that won't be able to come with you as you go and as you level up and as you grow and as you step into that next version of yourself, and confronting those parts that won't be able to go. It's really, really healing.
I feel like I've experienced that. Because I feel like it's really easy to stick in those spots, like you said, to be like, oh yeah, this is like how I fit in this bubble, and I feel like I can't let go of that because I learned it for so long. And that's kind of what I also delved in with all the, you know, kind of traumatic things I've been through, was kind of reevaluating like, oh, how I've handled this. Well, I've like watched my mom do this, or like my dad's handled it this way, or I've seen like my whole family just kind of like deal with these kind of things in a not so positive way. And so I feel like in a sense I've been able to realize that I've not only broken out of like a very harmful negative way of like viewing myself, but also I've like broken a part of the family cycle that I feel like I didn't even know was like a thing. Totally. I'm just like, what's a family cycle? What's breaking the family cycle? Like it just, there's so much that you learn. I feel like when you do come into a new version of yourself. I know though, for a long time I was still lost. So I feel like once you're leaving that, you're like, oh, how do I find myself again? And you really have to find things that bring you joy. Like what's something that you really like? And like asking those questions are hard. Like if you sit there and be like, oh, what are you passionate about? It's like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, so it just helps you ask those questions, which I feel like a lot of us are, like, the society now I feel like is getting more open to people like finding their way and healing and promoting that kind of thing, which is really cool because I wish it existed a lot for people back then.
Yeah, for sure. I like to call moments like that. If you've ever seen the movie Pretty Woman.
Oh, such a good movie.
Right? It's like her, like, I don't even know what eggs I like. She's like, and she goes on this journey of like figuring out like what you're talking about, like what am I passionate about? Asking these questions. But what's really interesting is even touching back with what you were saying about sometimes when we're really in that fight or flight mode, those are questions that are not even on our radar because we're trying to survive. Mm-hmm. And as we do get out of that fight or flight mode, as we do start to heal those traumatic experiences that we had, and I actually talk about this in my book. If you guys aren't familiar, I'm an author, and I wrote a book called Meant for More: Igniting Your Purpose in a World That Tries to Dim Your Light. And I talk about there's a difference in the trauma that we experience. Like a lot of the dark night of the soul, like your sexual assault, the loss of a child, like those are kind of like the cannonball size wounds that can happen. And other traumatic experiences, although they might not be the cannonball size, other things that might happen, like when you get bullied, those are more of like the bullet size wounds, but they still hurt, and enough bullet sizes actually leaves a lot more carnage than a cannonball. And so as we go and heal all of that stuff, that's when we're able to start to come out of that fight or flight mode and ask ourselves those bigger questions and really start to pursue what we're passionate about and start to understand more of who we are, who we were created to be, what sets our heart and our soul on fire, maybe the business that we want to build, how we want to help people, which I know a lot of people tend to, as we go through different journeys, all of a sudden we pick up tools along the way to be able to help others. And there's a lot of people out there coaching and doing different things that help with that.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many coaches. I mean, I feel like coaches were not a very popular thing many years ago, but you've started to see it, like more coaches are focusing, like not only business owners, but how are they doing interpersonally?
Totally.
How are they dealing with things? Because if like that person, like the business owner is not good, then the business kind of falls through. Because I know I dealt with something recently this year too that I didn't see coming, and so when that happened though, I had to deal with that, and then I'm the only person that runs a business at the moment, and so it's really hard to find ways to make sure that keeps going while you're not. So I know you probably have lots of advice on that topic, but what are some ways that you found to help the business run while you're kind of going through things like that?
Ooh, this is such a good question. And I think a lot of it actually depends on not only the person, the business, a lot even on your external circumstances. I went through, so I'll give it's almost like two sides to the same coin. So when I had my son, he's almost 7, after he was born, or actually right before he was born, I used to be a personal trainer. I had a gym. I was a health and wellness expert, and when I was like, I think maybe like 8 months pregnant out to here, and it got really awkward to do push-ups. I was just really feeling like,
can't imagine.
Like I was just like done. It was just like this slow fade of being done with fitness and with nutrition and within the health and wellness world, and like nothing traumatic happened and whatever it was, but I just really felt the call to evolve beyond that, and also just to really be a mom. But at the same time, to be able to shut down my gym, to finish out with clients, to not see and not have personal training clients anymore, I had also, before that, built up another business that had residual income. And so for me to then stop seeing dozens of clients, and my husband had a full-time job, and so I had the financial support around me to be able to shut something down. So I think that if you are being called to either shut something down or take a pause, then obviously be wise about it. Make sure that the support system is there, right? And then sometimes there's situations in life where we can't do that, and things happen. And you know, for you as a photographer, I'm sure, like, if you get hurt, like, how do you make money, right? And I think that's where having multiple streams of revenue is really important, as well as systems. Like, I'm a big systems person. Like, people are like, how do you get so much done? And I'm like, because I have systems, and I have a team, and I have people that help. Like, I have multiple assistants that help with things on the back end, and systems in place to where when I build something or write something or create something, I do it in a way that it can be utilized or purchased multiple times, so there's multiple streams of revenue. So that, like, when I had, you know, I just had a baby 5 months ago, and when she was born, it was like, you know, I had other people and a team, and I was preparing for that, and had people that helped fill in the gaps, where when I was just going to be in like the newborn bubble for the first month of just like not sleeping and breastfeeding and right? It's like there's systems in place, and emails still get to go out, and podcasts still get to be launched, and events still get to go on, and so it just is like systems and people. Like, I don't ever do it alone. I've done that before, and it's really hard. And I'm not interested in doing that anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure once you've learned there's a different option, I'm sure you'd never really look back.
Oh, for sure. And outsourcing is like the best thing. And for those of us who have like control things, right?
Yes.
That can be hard, right? That's like, like, I can do it, and I'm very capable, like, as you are. It's like, I'm a go-getter, like, I'm your girl, you need something done, like, I'll do it, and I'll do it with excellence. And at the same time, we're also not meant to do it all, and to do everything. And so I have found there's so much joy in delegating, and there's so much joy in outsourcing, and things get done way better than what I could have ever even done myself. So when I actually first started a podcast, I'll give this example. Years and years ago, when podcasts first started, it was called Gen Y Unlocked. So it was like Generation Y, like millennials. I'm one of the older millennials. But it was like this play on words, like your why, your purpose, like, why are you here? So, and I was doing all of it. I was like doing the cover art and the show notes and the recording and the editing and the like all the things. And it would take me like 5 or 6 hours to get out one episode, and I'm like, this is dumb. Like, and I did it for like 20 something episodes, and then I had a baby, and it like went away, and then now I have a team, and I get to do things like this, and then I send it off, and it magically shows up, and it's amazing, right?
Oh, that does sound, I can't believe that.
Right? Because like for me, it's like, I know I'm called to be a voice. Like, I love conversations like this. I love talking with people, like providing value and content. But I don't want to do like the editing and all of that different stuff. So this is like my zone of genius. And the other stuff, like, I can outsource that, and it actually makes it even better than what I could have ever even done. And I get to help another mom. She's a single mom, the gal that does my podcast, and love being able to like be a long-term client of hers, and love to be able to provide value and content and have conversations for people like you watching and listening. And it's way better than doing it on your own.
Yep. I will be there probably shortly, just because I am that person that is making online marketing, and I say I'll get to it, and then it's like, oh, it's been 4 months and I did not get to it. So, as
do you know that you can hire people to do your editing, like your photography editing?
Mm-hmm. Fiverr, I've heard, is a good place to check for people like that.
But there's also like whole websites that you can just like, you like get to pick your style and you send it off. It's almost like an editing agency. That's amazing. Like if I was ever to be a
they probably would do better than me, honestly.
For sure. I mean, not that you're great, but if I know a lot of photographers, they're like, that's like the worst part. Like the photos, like they love people and taking pictures.
Yes.
Like the way that you see the world, and then you're behind a computer editing, right?
I know, I do look like that. I'm just like, oh, the thing in the back I gotta remove, like all this stuff. Yeah, that probably does take. Sometimes I like it. It really depends on the shoot, but most of the time, I'm like, man, I bet if I had a little bit more oomph, this could be done quicker. So, as you've kind of automated those things, though, what are the personal points you make sure to keep doing? Because I know you do have the podcast and you have the business and bubbly, or like, what are ways, like maybe past clients or just like friends? How do you make sure? I mean, it probably gives you more time for that stuff, but I don't know. What does it look like for you?
As far as the outsourcing or this?
Well, just like besides doing all that, how do you make sure to have personal touches with like, say, people who've been on your podcast? Because I know they probably send out messages, but do you like call them? Do you take them out to coffee? Like, how to make sure you're still keeping those personal touches with people?
This is such a great question. It actually gets into boundaries.
We were talking about boundaries yesterday in my little Sippin' Social.
Yes, so. Boundaries, because like what you're saying, there's this balance of yes to the personal touches, and to also like boundaries within your business, or even just within your life of who gets your time, who gets your attention. And that type of a thing. And when it comes to, especially being, whether it's a community builder or leader, someone that's very outward facing, what I like to call, they're called to kind of lead from the front of the room. What's really interesting, and I found this out, so I actually used to have a TV show for 5 years, and so this is like my jam. This is my jam, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But what I found was that people will think that they know you. Like I would go to the grocery store and people would be like, oh, I know you, like I work out with you. It was called Fox 12 Fitness. I was a like fitness and nutrition guru for 5 years in this area. And people will be like, oh my gosh, like I love your show. Like you talk about this or that, like, and they were just, and I like, I'm totally friendly with them, but they think that they know me, but I have no clue who they are, right? So there's an honoring of like, okay, like as an outward facing, as a forward facing person that leads from the front of the room, that's very visible. There's almost like this understanding or this, like, it's good to know that people will think that they know you better than what they do. Because in today's society, there is so much value on being an influencer or being on TV or having however many followers or whatever that is. And then there's also like the boundaries of what it looks like to say, okay, where is my time valuable? Where's my attention? And is it taking away from the things that matter most? So for me, I've built businesses and have done things before that honestly like took a lot of time away from family and took a lot of time away from friends. And those are actually the things that I value the most. And so I've gone through the different parts of my journey to where I'm not interested in building things that when I say these things matter most, that it takes away from them. Or that my actions and my time doesn't reflect that belief.
Sure.
And so it looks like a lot of boundaries. It looks like a lot of time blocking, right? So
put in the calendar, like this is dedicated.
For sure, for sure. It looks like having that support around you. So with my husband, he's a firefighter, so he's gone at the station for 48 hours. So I'm in like mom mode for the most part, like for those 48 hours. And then when he comes home, then we talk about our schedule and he helps with different stuff. You know, and I have family here that helps with the kids as well, like grandmas and grandpas,
That's nice.
which is really nice. And then there's other things. So then I'll actually show you a physical example, which I just did, but if you're watching the video, So here's this is just a little postcard. Thank you, Vanna White. Just a little postcard for our new members. But on the back, I also wanted the special touch of a handwritten.
Oh.
And so what I did was I hand wrote a little note to our new members, but then I also added it onto the postcard, so it is handwritten, but it's also scalable, right? So our new members will get a welcome postcard with a handwritten. Yes, it's been copied on on Vistaprint or whatever, but it's the special touches. There still is a way to be scalable at large, and in the business world, when it comes to business, people then pay for access, right? So podcast stuff is free, like the blog stuff is free, like video stuff, content, Instagram, all that stuff is free. But as you get closer to a leader with more access, more time, more one-on-one, more conversation, more insight, then there's probably more of a price tag to it. Obviously, it's not like that with friends and family or with those, those that are closest to me. But my inner circle, as things have gotten bigger and as I've been more visible, my inner circle has actually gotten deeper and smaller and richer in a just in a richness way. But a lot of people think that they're in the inner circle, but they're they're in the medium circle. So,
Inner circles. I like that visual.
yeah, and that's where boundaries in business come, and at different seasons of different people ebb and flow within different closeness, if you will. That's kind of a long answer. I don't even know if I answered your question.
I think you did. Well, yeah, because you said as you grow upscale, you have the cards, and then you create time for it's what Sandra was kind of talking in our speech yesterday is the non-negotiables. So she's kind of sharing how to create healthy boundaries, and so she goes, "What are those?" And she goes, "Maybe it's family, maybe it's you going to the gym. Those are non-negotiables. People cannot change that on you. They can't persuade you to fit themselves into the calendar." I know when I was very first starting, I was doing real estate. I didn't know that. I mean, that was my first time being a 1099 employee, and I'm basically a contractor, and I was listening to realtors who were calling me, so I need to shoot tomorrow at this time. Can you do it? And I'm well, yeah, it's business, and I can't say no, because I'm obviously representing this media company. And I did that over and over, and sure enough, I was at that time where Boise was peak selling season, the market was hot, so I was working 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., and I would go all around the valley. I'd go Boise, Meridian, Caldwell, Payette, and there was no strategic way about it. It was always run around with a chicken head cut off and things like that. And I'd come home, and I was just so tired, and I got so burnt out because I didn't know how to say no. And now if I have any of those kind of things, I'm hey, listen, I would love to do that for you. This is my next availability. If that works for you, then we can kind of move forward. So it's been really nice to be able to have that power. And it's crazy to think that I just couldn't do that back then. But also, I'm doing my own thing. So yeah, this can't be by my rules.
That's so good. I love it. So what are so now kind of on the topic of business, what are some of the things for you as a woman in business and now as a community leader dealing with a lot of other women in business, which typically we tend to be the boss, the in charge, the right? And one of our things with Business and Bubbly is we actually want big people. We want people where you feel you have been too much. You're probably you fit in. In the places that you feel you're not enough gets filled in by the other women that are around you. And so we actually invite and we want and we attract big people. We attract leaders. We attract a lot of women like that. And what that can also do is if there's a lot of big people in the room, it can sometimes be messy, right?
You can go every which way.
Totally. So for you, leading as not only a woman in business, but leading other women in business, what are maybe some of the great things that you have learned along the way? And maybe the things okay, ladies, this is what I see. time to step up.
Okay. I feel like I want to start with the last one.
Okay.
Because this is my first time ever being with like a women-only group. Like I just never grew up being around women like that. And so I feel sometimes our knowledge of things can come in between someone else's, like their space. So say if like I was a baker, but you've been in the cooking industry or that for like many number of years, you've done lots of research, and I'm just starting and I know my knowledge and say, oh, I know that if you bake this cake at this many degrees, like it comes out perfect. And you're over here like, no, that's not true. Like actually in my experience, this is where it comes in. So it's almost like that, oh yeah, but here's where I come in a little bit more. And so it's actually kind of an improv little lesson is that go from a yeah but to a yes and, because a lot of the time we have a lot of yeah buts. And so I think a lot of women, when they see someone else kind of moving over that territory, they want to make sure they've got that covered. Like, oh yeah, yes, you said that, but did you actually know this is actually the truth? And here's the research to back it up. And I feel like we need to allow that space for that person. I feel like that could be a separate conversation to kind of be like, oh hey, I noticed that you said that. I just kind of want to talk more about it. Like, this is actually what I know. So then becomes more of a fluid conversation rather than like, I'm just gonna one up you
like
because
a one-upper.
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes
the one-uppers.
the yeah butters, those are yeah. We need a little bit less of those, but I feel like that's kind of what I've learned, and I feel like, you know, just kind of put that little pride, kind of put it away, let that person have their time, and then kind of create like a separate conversation rather than in front of everybody, because that never feels good.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's one of the things I've noticed. I feel like so far women have been pretty supportive and open to things.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the great things I've noticed is that a lot of women really want a space to kind of mastermind things. And so that's what I kind of did yesterday is like, hey, I notice a lot of you just want to mastermind. And mastermind, you obviously give a problem and other people give advice about it. And it's really fun to hear that. You would think, oh, someone's in marketing, obviously another person in that marketing field is going to give the best advice. But sometimes people are in a whole different ballpark, and they kind of give the best advice. And so that's been really great to hear that other women are super on top of like, oh, here's what I got, girl. Like, I have a hand here, I have a hand here. And so everybody's giving all this information. And then also when I've seen women, like when I give them a prompt to dive in conversation, it's just like instant buzzing. They're talking with one another. They carry a lot of things. And so, I mean, when you ask after connections, like, what did you take away from that? And I love being able to ask that because sometimes the answers come out a lot better than you would expect. So,
yeah.
So while there are some yeah buts, there's still a lot of yes ands. And so, yeah, it's been really good to see that.
That's so good. I love that. And I love that, like, what we're really finding is that they really are craving connection, and they're craving those conversations, and they're craving those places to be seen and heard and to be known and to belong. And that's what we're all about. So it's really fun to see only you thrive as a leader, because you're absolutely meant for it, and just creating that space for women to be able to come in and to connect and to learn and to not only, what I love is that they're like, this isn't about the guru at the front of the room that's like the know-all, end-all, be-all. This is about the collective genius that goes on in the room, because we have a lot of amazing women that know incredible things. And there's a difference between creating an audience versus creating a community. And when you create an audience that's more like the guru at the front of the room, like I'm the end all be all know all, like my program is the best, I'm like the expert type of a thing, and what ends up happening is, yes, you get like, you'll get an audience, you'll get a following, that type of a thing, but you won't necessarily like, it'll just be talking at people a lot, compared to when you actually create community, like what matters most. And the connection in the audience happens with the guru, compared to community where connection happens collectively, and that that every single person, that we all can provide value. And so that's what I love, like just how you're creating community and creating those spaces for other women to be seen and to be known and to be heard and to belong. And it says a lot about you as a leader, even at such a young age, because a lot of insecure leaders, like, it has to be about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like I'm the last person to be thought of, honestly. At the end of the day, especially when, like, people are going through their little, like, sharing about themselves, like, Sarah, what about you? And I'm like, oh, yeah, so this is basically about me, okay, and that's about it. You know, you make it short because I want other people to have that space to kind of talk about themselves, what lights them up, and so, yeah, it has been a great time. I feel like I've got a lot more comfortable. I feel like I'm getting more creative with the things that people are getting able to do, and getting more passionate about research of, like, oh, what are some great team bonding things for women, especially because there's a lot of team bonding. I'm like, seems a little male-y there. Let's maybe make it a female
Cheesy
version of theirs.
Icebreaker, dumb.
No one likes the icebreakers, I found. So you gotta kind of make it fun.
Yeah. What has been something that you were, as a chapter director, that you have grown in?
Well, I know that I really wanted to grow in kind of more of my public speaking, and so I feel like I've gotten way more of a flow down. Like yesterday, someone was like, "You're just so good at, like, being comfortable up there. You're just fun. You're just making it nice and light." And I feel like before I was, like, always thinking in my head, like, "Oh, what's that line?" It was, like, kind of rigid, like, "Oh, I'm talking on this point, lean to the next point." So it's becoming more of a conversation. I feel like I'm a lot more present in kind of what's happening with the group, because I'm able to look at the faces, take a second, and it's less about, like, oh, how do I make a great speech? It's more about how can I create a better conversation.
Love that. Love that. Anything else that you have found that was pleasantly either surprising or like, wow, I've really grown in this area as a community leader and chapter director?
I think I've grown a lot in kind of what I stand for too, just because I went through something and I was kind of struggling. I'm like, oh, what do I like? What am I passionate about? And I feel like it always came back to people just kind of being able to be themselves. And so I feel like as I've kind of laid that foundation, a lot of people are out there, they're being goofy, and I feel like it's really made them closer to me. So I know that once I see that kind of side of their personality, I'm able to connect them with someone else and be like, oh, I've got to know so-and-so. And so I feel like I'm really strengthening my gift of being a connector as well. Just because I feel like I've always loved being a host, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I had a great time talking to you, but I know if you talk to so-and-so over here, y'all are going to hit it off, probably be your best girlfriend at the end of it. And so it's been fun. And also using social media as like a way to kind of share about yourself, being creative with that. What can you say in posts to like bring people in, make them more curious? And so there's a little science behind that, and I feel like it's made me more open to marketing as well, just because I feel like I've never had really a direction, but like now that I do have more purpose of what I bring to the table, it's giving me a lot more streamlined ways of kind of reaching out to people.
I love that. So growing in your speaking, in your ability to connect others, and marketing, and getting clear on your message. So good. I love it. Well, as we wrap this up, do you have any other little last home run things that you want to say?
What would be a home run?
Knock it out of the park.
Well, I just know that, I mean, when we first talked, that one of the things that I am just seeing just in kind of the world right now is that women really have the opportunity to run the show right now. I think we've kind of been in a world where it's been very male dominated, and now we're realizing that women kind of run it better than they do. So I feel like if you want to be able to run the world, you have the possibility to do so. And it really comes from within, and also comes with the community. So if you have that passion and you want to do big things, then it's totally doable, but just make sure you have a tribe surrounding you.
So good. I love it. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Well, probably mostly ladies.
And one guy, probably.
One guy.
You
hey,
too.
Hey
You
guy,
too.
We see you. We appreciate you. But I love this. Well, Sarah, thanks for sharing your wisdom and your story and leading first in vulnerability. You're doing such an amazing job. And I'm just really, as the founder, I'm really, really proud of you. And can't wait to see what you do and the incredible community that you continue to bring in and grow. Because what I love about big leaders is that they attract other big leaders. And so the women that are surrounding you are not minor followers by any means. You're creating and holding space for other big leaders and big people, and it only happens by being a big leader and by being a big person. And what I mean by big leader, big person, sure, there's insecurities, sure, there's things we want to work on, but it's not in the driver's seat, and it doesn't. Other big people don't make you feel small or less than, and that you're able and willing to stand shoulder to shoulder, and that's what this is about. So, all right, you guys, well, thank you so much for being here. If you're watching live or the replay on video, thanks for hanging out with us at Table Talk. We are looking forward to doing more of these, and if you are listening to the replay on the podcast, make sure, we'd actually love to hear your guys' favorite takeaway. Maybe cool. Even if you are willing and open to dive into the deep end with us as far as even vulnerability and sharing something of your story with us. You can come hang out with us on Instagram. I know that's where I hang out most of the time, Sarah. Instagram, a little on Facebook.
I'm trying.
I know. I'm mostly on Instagram. Are you a TikToker? I'm not a TikToker either.
Yep. I've always been Instagram. It's kind of like my jam right there.
Right, Instagram. So we hang out on Instagram.
That's for sure.
So come hang out, and we'd actually love to get to know you. One of the fun things that we're doing, you'll also see on our Instagram, is that we actually believe that when we ask better questions and when we get brave with our answers, it creates more connection. And so you'll actually be starting to see some really fun, even just better questions that we're asking women. We're facilitating and inviting women in our rooms and our Sip and Socials and our chapters to begin to really ask better questions. Obviously inviting them to be brave and vulnerable with their answers, and what it really does is it creates that connection. So even come, like I said, come hang out with us on Instagram, but come ready and willing to answer the questions, and be brave with your answers. And if you are really desiring, like what Sarah said, to dive into community, we have I think 8 local chapters now. We have our online chapter. We're continuing to grow. If maybe there's not a chapter in your area, either come get plugged into our virtual chapters for that virtual connection and community, or if you are a leading woman, an expert in your area that you know that you're called to lead from the front of the room, that you want to improve on your public speaking skills, that you want to become a better connector, then maybe being a chapter director is for you. And obviously Sarah is loving it, and you know you're called to, if you're meant to lead from the front of the room and you are a connector in your area, then let's chat for sure. You can find info on that at businessandbubbly.com. But that's what we got for today. Thanks for being here, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
Always love talking with you. All right, you guys, have an amazing day.